meaning. Suffer the little children to come unto me, and forbid them not, for such is the kingdom of God. Together, we can convince our fellow countrymen that America should, can, and will preserve God's greatest gift.
Welcome to the Presidential Pro-Life Teletown Hall, presented by Personhood USA. And now your host, Steve Dace.
And greetings, good evening, and welcome to a very special edition of the Steve Dace radio program. It is the defining issue for many Americans, certainly one of the most loyal voting blocs every election, and that is the inalienable right to life, the sanctity of human life, the pro-life vote. And certainly that is the case in this election. We've had a president for the last 4 years who has demonstrated throughout his political career that sadly he has absolutely no regard for the inalienable right to life. In the past, we've had other candidates who claimed that this was one of their top issues, but sadly they did little to actually advance the cause. And this has now pro-life voters around the country eager to find a true champion for this issue. And that's why we want to welcome you to this teletown hall. We have with us Keith Mason from Personhood USA. Keith, are you on the line? Can you hear me?
Steve, I can hear you great, and I'm honored to be with you and the literally tens of thousands on the town hall meeting that's simulcasting your radio program.
We also want to welcome a new audience with us here tonight, Bot Radio Network, 88 radio stations around the country reaching the heart of America. I want to welcome all of their listeners for joining us tonight as well, because you're going to get a chance to hear 4 of the 5 candidates that signed Personhood USA's presidential pledge. And this pledge, I think, is the most basic and fundamental articulation of the right to life that really we've ever posed to presidential candidates. And we're going to talk to 4 of these candidates tonight. We'll introduce the very first one here in just a second. But, Keith, before we begin, what are you looking forward to tonight? What do you want the listeners to come away with from this event?
Well, I think we have a great opportunity to really understand where the candidates are on life and the most important issue of our day, and to, really help support them, know which ones we're going to support, and it's really those who are championing life. And so we want to reward those candidates who are standing for the most defenseless among us. And so I'm really interested to hear some of the statements and positions of the candidates we have on the line, and I'm very encouraged by the call and encouraged for the future of our nation.
Well, we want to thank Keith and Personhood USA for sponsoring this event. Please support them with prayer and financial support. You can join the movement at personhoodusa.com. Let's welcome our very first guest that we're scheduled to have here this evening. Texas Governor Rick Perry joins us here. And, Governor, we want to welcome you to the program. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Steve, thank you. It's a great honor for me to be on, and Keith, thank you for the work that you've done over at Personhood USA. And if you have, I'd love to just make an opening statement if I can, and open it up to any questions. Or
sure,
great,
sure, that'd be great, Governor. Yep.
Thank you, and again, thanks for taking time away from busy schedules, but as Keith said, this is the most important issue that we face from the standpoint of the movement and from making a difference in so many lives. And we think about the 50 million children that didn't find their way into the world because of a decision that was made, but I just want to say to the men and women out there on the front lines, and I've had the great privilege to meet some more of them just in the last couple of weeks, and they're really amazing, dedicated to protecting life. And my commitment to the unborn it's actually rooted in our founding fathers' documents. And that came from the wisdom of the Old Testament and the natural law written on our hearts. And the Declaration of Independence declared, the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are rights that are endowed by our Creator. And that's not open to some arbitrary bureaucrat or a judge in a black robe, legislators with robes, as I refer to them. or for that matter, any human power. They declared it as a right that comes from God. And in Psalms 139, David was speaking of God, and he wrote that you knit me together in my mother's womb, and your eyes saw my unformed body, and all the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. And Jeremiah said similar words, and that life is human life is sacred for God, and I believe that He created man that we should never treat trivially or frivolously. And we know in our hearts that life inside the womb is a human being. I mean, I don't think I've ever met an individual, a woman who has had the misfortune of going through a miscarriage and say, "Oh, I lost my fetus." When a tragedy like that strikes, a loving mother says, "I lost my baby." And despite the moral code that's written in our hearts, as I said earlier, this country's allowed 50 million unborn children to be legally aborted. And it is a great scar on our nation's conscience. And, my view is that life begins at conception, and innocent human life should be protected until natural death. And that has guided me as the governor of my home state. I signed parental consent laws so that minors seeking an abortion couldn't do so without the involvement of a parent. I signed a prenatal protection act, an informed consent law. Just this last session of the legislature, it gave me, it was especially meaningful, let me just put it that way, to sign my name to the state budget that defunds Planned Parenthood in Texas. And we've already seen 12 Planned Parenthood clinics shut down. That truly is standing in the gap. And I want to give my fellow legislators appropriate kudos for their wisdom and their courage. Obviously, that has earned the scorn of the Obama administration, which is now using the wheels of the bureaucracy to attempt to throw out this provision in state law. But it has not been my first fight with Washington, and Lord willing, it will not be my last. But it's not going to go on without a fight. But for me, this is not about politics. It's about protecting human life, and not all children are born into ideal circumstances, but no one ever say that there's such a thing as an unwanted child. In God's economy, such a being doesn't exist. So anyway, I can promise you this: if you elect me president on day one of my term in office, I will reinstitute the Mexico City policy that bans taxpayer-funded abortions overseas, and that will just get us started. So with that, let me kind of wrap up and attempt to answer questions. But anyway, again, Keith and Steve, thanks for including me, and thanks for what you're doing in the fight for life.
Well, Governor, thank you for joining us. Let's begin the questions. And here's a question I would like to ask the candidates tonight. According to the pledge each of you signed, you have agreed to, quote, endorse legislation to make clear that the 14th Amendment protections apply to unborn children, unquote. I'm wondering, what would that legislation look like, first of all? And then, what happens if the U.S. Supreme Court attempts to strike down this legislation and replace it with one of its own edicts denying the inalienable right to life for all persons born or unborn? Would you enforce the inalienable right to life or the court's opinion as the law?
Well, obviously, you would enforce the right to life opinion. I think, from my perspective, where we need to go is to a human life amendment, and do so without waiting for the courts to overturn Roe v. Wade You know, our goal here as the President of the United States, obviously, to put men or women on the court who are strict constructionists and who understand that Constitution is not something to be trivialized with their own opinions, and Roe v. Wade will be overturned, I believe, with a true pro-life president, possibly appointing upwards of two or three new Supreme Court justices. So that would be certainly my goal.
Keith, do you have a question for the governor?
I do, Governor Perry. I would like to say that we are grateful that you signed the pledge for personhood, and just we're a young movement. We're led by the young generation of the pro-life movement, and I think this is a paradigm shift, and I'm excited to know that the nation and the pro-life movement is focusing more on the fundamental, sort of goal of the pro-life movement, which is personhood for all human beings. We have, I'm looking at the box here, we have about 25,765 total attendees on the town hall. We have some questions from some of them. Governor Perry, I'd like to just ask
Keith,
one of the questions here.
We're going to get to that commercial. During the commercial break, we will let the governor answer the question next.
That's great.
Okay, Keith, we're clear. Go ahead. Ask your question.
Okay, so for all those on the town hall that have been waiting and asking questions, I have one here from, let's see here, from Theodore Sieber in Oregon. Let's see here. In the past, you have allowed for exceptions for rape and incest and abortion, but obviously the new personhood pledge that you've committed to is sort of raised the standard. Could you explain your commitment on that issue, and if there's a change, could you explain that?
Yeah, Keith, and there has been, and this is something that is relatively new, and it goes back to a meeting with Rebecca Kissling, who was at the Gift for Life, and we had a fairly lengthy and heartfelt conversation about how she was conceived and raped, and looking in her eyes, and I couldn't come up with an answer to defend the exceptions for rape and incest, and over the course of the last few weeks and the Christmas holidays, and reflecting on that, I would suggest my pro-life position has been rather strong as the governor of Texas, but she made a statement to me that was really profound and pierced my heart. So, as I signed that document, I will suggest to you that all I can tell you is God was working on my heart.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your commitment. And Steve, do you have any other questions?
No, that is the end of our time, Governor. Thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. Good luck on the rest of the campaign.
Godspeed, and look forward to talking to you guys later. So long.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Bye.
Same to you. Happy New Year. That is Texas Governor Rick Perry with us here on the Teletown Hall, presented by Personhood USA. Again, we want to thank them for sponsoring this event. You can support them with prayer and financial support, and join the movement to stand for the inalienable right to life for all people, born or unborn, at personhoodusa.com. We will wait. We'll be back here on the air in 1 minute, and we hope to connect with Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, who is out on the campaign trail.